In June 2023, the city of Cleveland was rocked by the heartbreaking case of Kristel Candelario, a mother who left her 16-month-old daughter, Jailyn, to die alone in a crib while she went on a trip. What initially seemed like a clear case of neglect and child endangerment slowly revealed itself to be a complex story of mental health issues, trauma, and the harrowing effects of untreated psychological disorders. However, the gravity of the crime was undeniable, and the case concluded with Candelario being sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This tragic story brings up questions about the balance between personal accountability and the impact of mental illness, the responsibilities of a parent, and the systemic failures that sometimes lead to unimaginable outcomes. As we examine the details of this case, we must look at both the facts and the broader context to understand the factors that led to such a devastating outcome. Kristel Candelario's early life and struggles. Kristel Candelario immigrated to the United States from Ecuador in 2016. She arrived with her grandmother, and after a few years, her parents also joined them. Together, they built a life in Cleveland, Ohio. During this period, Kristel got married and had her first child, a daughter named Amaya. However, her marriage did not last, and she soon found herself a single mother, navigating the challenges of raising her child without a partner. After her divorce, Kristel met Jailyn's father during a trip back to Ecuador. Their relationship, though initially filled with promise, became violent while she was pregnant with Jailyn. Her partner became physically abusive, and Kristel made the difficult decision to leave Ecuador and return to Cleveland, cutting all ties with Jailyn's father. Jailyn was born in Cleveland, and her father was never involved in her life. The responsibility of raising two children as a single mother weighed heavily on Kristel. She was living with her parents, who helped care for Amaya and Jailyn. Despite their support, Kristel struggled emotionally, physically, and financially. The burden of providing for her children, while also dealing with her own emotional issues, became overwhelming. Kristel's struggles with her mental health began to manifest in physical symptoms. She was struggling to maintain a sense of normalcy, and her mental health was deteriorating rapidly. Mental health struggles leading to a breaking point. In early 2023, Kristel's mental health issues took a significant turn for the worse. In February 2023, after spending several days isolated in her room, her mother became concerned and checked on her. Kristel complained of numbness on one side of her body, and her mother rushed her to Hillcrest Hospital. Doctors initially suspected she might be having a stroke due to the physical symptoms she was exhibiting, such as facial drooping and severe headaches. After a series of tests and evaluations, doctors found nothing physically wrong with Kristel's brain. She was diagnosed with severe anxiety, and doctors believed that her physical symptoms were psychosomatic, a result of the immense stress and anxiety she was experiencing. She was prescribed a combination of medications, including Depakote, an anti-seizure medication also used to treat mood disorders, and Effexor, an antidepressant. The doctors instructed her to take the medications as prescribed, hoping that they would alleviate her symptoms. However, Kristel's mental state continued to decline. In March 2023, she returned to Hillcrest Hospital, claiming that she had run out of her medications and that she was still experiencing severe symptoms. Once again, doctors evaluated her and determined that her anxiety and stress were manifesting physically. They prescribed her more medication, including Atarax, to help her sleep, as she had been suffering from severe insomnia. Kristel was instructed to continue taking her medications as directed, but she soon stopped taking them altogether. This decision would prove to have disastrous consequences. The medications she was prescribed were not only vital for managing her mental health conditions, but they also required careful tapering when discontinued. Suddenly stopping these medications could lead to dangerous side effects and exacerbate her underlying mental health issues. Kristel, however, chose to stop taking them because she felt they were not working. The result was a downward spiral in her mental and emotional state. The trip to Puerto Rico and its aftermath. In May 2023, Kristel made a series of decisions that would forever change her life and the lives of her loved ones. She left her home in Cleveland and traveled to Puerto Rico with friends. While on this trip, she left her daughter, Jailyn, home alone in a crib. Jailyn, just 16 months old, was left without food or water, and over the course of several days, she tragically died of dehydration and starvation. Pictures and videos from the trip show Kristel seemingly having fun, smiling with friends, and enjoying herself. This stark contrast between her behavior on the trip and the fate of her daughter at home horrified those who later heard the details of the case. Prosecutors would later use these images to paint a picture of a mother who showed no remorse or concern for her child. However, those who have experienced severe mental health issues understand that outward appearances can be deceiving. Kristel's defense attorney highlighted the fact that someone suffering from anxiety, depression, or other mental health disorders can appear outwardly fine, even while struggling internally. Kristel herself would later explain that in her mind Jailyn was okay, and she did not fully comprehend the consequences of her actions. Kristel's trip to Puerto Rico, however, cannot be excused simply by her mental state. She made a series of conscious decisions to leave her daughter behind, and she had multiple opportunities to seek help or make different choices. Prosecutors argued that she had the mental capacity to plan and execute a vacation, travel across state lines, and interact with friends, but she chose to neglect her most basic responsibility as a mother: the care of her child. The 911 call and the investigation. Upon returning to Cleveland, Kristel discovered the horrific reality of what had happened. Jailyn was unresponsive in her crib, and Kristel made a frantic 911 call. The audio from that call was played in court, and Kristel can be heard screaming for help, desperately asking for assistance as her daughter lay dying. While the call does demonstrate that Kristel was distressed in that moment, prosecutors pointed out that it came far too late. Jailyn had already suffered for days without food or water, and Kristel's actions, leaving her child alone for an extended period, directly caused her death. The police investigation revealed even more disturbing details. Kristel had not only neglected Jailyn, but she had also shown a shocking lack of remorse in the weeks following her daughter's death. Jail phone calls between Kristel and her mother were played in court, and during one conversation, Kristel can be heard discussing the fun she had on her trip, the cost of a rental car, and other mundane topics. At no point in that conversation did she express guilt or sorrow for the death of her child. The prosecutors argued that Kristel's lack of emotion and apparent indifference demonstrated that she was not suffering from a temporary mental break, but was instead fully aware of her actions and their consequences. The court proceedings and sentencing. As the court proceedings unfolded, Kristel's defense team focused on her mental health issues, arguing that her actions were a result of severe depression, anxiety, and a failure to properly manage her medications. They pointed to her history of mental health struggles, the multiple hospital visits, and the fact that she had been prescribed strong psychiatric medications as evidence that she was not in a stable state of mind. Her defense attorney also highlighted Kristel's remorse during her 911 call and the fact that she took responsibility for her actions by pleading guilty to child endangerment. They argued that her actions were the result of a mental health crisis, not intentional malice. However, the prosecution was adamant that Kristel's mental health issues did not excuse her behavior. They pointed to the calculated nature of her trip, the fact that she had the mental capacity to plan and execute a vacation, and the disturbing conversations she had while in jail. They argued that she showed a complete lack of concern for her daughter's well-being and that her actions were inexcusable. The judge ultimately agreed with the prosecution. In his sentencing remarks, the judge stated that while Kristel may have been suffering from mental health issues, her actions demonstrated a clear disregard for her responsibilities as a mother. He sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole, stating that she would spend the rest of her life in a cell, just as Jailyn had spent her final days confined to a crib. Conclusion: this case raises important questions about the role of mental health care in preventing such tragedies. Could more comprehensive treatment have saved Jailyn's life? Could better support systems for struggling parents prevent future cases like this one? While we may never have all the answers, it is clear that the intersection of mental health, neglect, and personal responsibility remains a complex and deeply challenging issue in our society.